Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, November 9th, 2022 Planning Board meeting for the Town of Raymond. The Planning Board will come to order. The board does have a quorum. We'll start with roll call. Mark, would you start us off?
Mark Childs. Ed Kranich.
Robert O'Neill.
Greg Foster.
Mike D'Arcangelo.
Mike Richmond.
This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chair if you are unable to see or hear. The board works from a published agenda and will be considering tonight's items in the following order. We have a tabled public hearing for the Jordan Bay Marina, Port Harbor Marina application, a new public hearing for Nicole Starrett Snow and Landscaping Service, and then a third public hearing for the codification of the land use and shoreland zoning ordinances. And I skipped the approval of the minutes, which we'll start off with. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinances or state law. All persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand at the microphone, state their name, address, and affiliation with the application. All persons speaking shall address the chair. Any conversations must be held in abeyance until after the board has formally adjourned. After the board votes on the merits of each application, it will prepare a written notice of decision. Because the notice of decision may substantially affect any appeals rights, and also as a matter of courtesy, the board asks that those attending the meeting with regard to a specific application not leave until the board has completed its discussion. Appeals from adverse decisions must be filed with the Superior Court or as otherwise provided by law within 45 days of this board's decision. Also, to be certain that you preserve your individual right to file any such appeal, you must be certain that the board records evidence of your appearance this evening. So our first order of business is the minutes for the October 12th abbreviated meeting.
I do have, it states here that I seconded the approval of the minutes, and I had to abstain because I wasn't at that meeting.
Ah, that's right. Who did second it?
Not I.
Not you. Did anybody remember seconding it? We know it wasn't Mike. So not you, Mike.
I do not recall.
So Sandy, you're gonna have to go back and check. Sandy, you're not up there. Sandy, you're gonna have to go back and check the video
I
on that.
will do that.
Okay. So I'm gonna just leave that blank.
Yep.
I think that's. Anyone else have any other changes they need to make?
Not here.
Is there a motion?
Motion to accept?
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? And abstained. 2 abstains. 402. Minutes are accepted. Actually, there is one change that Sandy is going to do that seems has dropped off. She's going to put back the little blurb that says that the video is our official minutes.
Okay.
This supports. Okay, the next item is our old business, the tabled application from Jordan Bay Marina, Port Harbor Marine, from 2 meetings ago. We never did get it off the table, I think, last meeting.
That's correct.
That's correct? Okay. First, we would need a motion to take it off the table.
So moved.
A second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? All right. So Will, a number of things came in right prior to the last meeting, which we didn't look at because it came in right prior to that last meeting.
Correct.
So could you just give us a quick as to where we are right now with
Sure.
missing?
Yeah,
or-
so I
or
think
if anything is missing?
they responded to our first round of comments. And for the most part, I think they addressed most of the comments, if not all of the comments. So, what I would suggest in terms of the way to proceed is actually to have them give a summary of the changes to the plans. And then we can respond to that. But we've reviewed those plans, and we sent them, I think we sent them revised comments, if there were, but they really weren't very.
It wasn't, right, okay.
So, I would recommend that we give the applicant a chance to present the project, and the changes go down through their comment response letter.
Okay, do we have missing items yet still?
There was nothing that really jumped out at me as missing items.
As far as, I know we were waiting on DEP, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're still waiting on DEP for sure.
Okay, is that,
So,
and everything else has come in?
as far as I know. Just double checking down through my list here.
You have a,
So there's,
The seven-
yeah, so there's a DEP, we've got the DEP NERPA, there's
Yeah.
a corresponding Army Corps permit that kind of goes along with that.
okay,
DEP stormwater permit, we were waiting on a DOT opening permit
yeah,
for the new driveway or the changed driveway. Confirmation of receipt of letters from affected utilities. We may have all of those, so let's hear what they have to say on that.
okay,
And then I had confirmation of the Raymond Fire and Rescue requirements, that they've satisfied all those,
Okay.
so.
all right. Rob?
Evening, how are you?
Fine, thanks.
Rob McSorley with Sebago Technics, representing the applicant on the project. What I thought we would do, we had gone through all the comments last time that you actually saw the detailed stuff for in your package that we were going to go over last month. I'm not going to go through all of those comments. I'm going to go up to the plans and show you briefly what has changed since that last meeting.
Okay,
And then I was going to go through Will's very complete memo and address some of the items in there, including some of the stuff that's outstanding, and then answer any questions that you have.
okay, why don't we break that in half, Rob? Why don't you give us the overview of where we stand right now on the project?
Okay,
And then let me get the public hearing going, and then we'll finish up with you going through the memo.
overview of where we're at right now. We still have some stuff outstanding since our last meeting. We did get a email from Portland Pipeline that they are okay with the plans as they are. They'll issue a final letter once we get our final approval from the town. So they're all taken care of. We were outstanding on the Portland Water District on the letter to serve. They have reviewed the plans. We made all the plan changes that they've requested, and we now have a letter of availability of service. And we'll forward that on to Will here. Army Corps permit, they've issued their permit for the wetland impacts. And then on the other outstanding items, let me get down to that list.
No changes to this plot layout that we have, that you gave us last time?
No substantial change. No substantial change. We are still awaiting the DEP permits. We spoke with them last week. I got a few comments that they asked us to address. We have submitted to them whatever comments that Will had come back with, and they have not gotten anything back to us on that. Their statutory time frame is less than 30 days away, so we anticipate it to be wrapped up by about December 8th, I think, is their date. Relative to the main DOT, we initially made our application in August. We've been trying to corner them to get the plans reviewed and those permits issued. Our initial meeting with them in August, stated they didn't see any issues with what we had presented relative to the utility crossing, the work within the right-of-way, and closing of the one access and keeping the other access or redoing that access to use that. On the Raymond Fire Department, Wayne's online, I believe. I think we are down to one comment relative to the boat rack system, and I need to get with him to discuss NFPA Chapter 303 and what it says relative to protection on that, and that would tie up the only real outstanding comment that we have with him.
Okay.
Relative to Will's memo. First thing, page 2, under item D, parking and circulation. What we have done is, if you look at the plan that's on the floor to my right, so I guess most of your rights, there is a item that's in yellow, which is a waiver request, which was mentioned by Will. Once again, what we had proposed is if you really felt strong about the 30 parking spaces versus what we were going to provide, then we could, if we have a problem, we could put them in some of the other areas for our working staff relative to their vehicles. But that waiver that's been put on, the plan says land use ordinance, Article 9 minimum standards, off-street parking, F, requests the waiver of one space for each 200 square feet or fraction thereof of gross area to allow 18 parking spaces for the intended use. So that's to deal with item D on page 2 of Will's memo. Further down that page, item F, utilities, once again, we have the ability to serve letter in hand. Going to page 3, under Article K, it's a repeat under item C on the off-street parking. That goes back to the waiver request again. Same page, item O. The applicant should provide a general housekeeping plan and best management practice that will be used in and around the service department to prevent groundwater contamination. That's part of the overall swim plan, SPCC plan that has been developed for the site, which they go through training every year with staff on. Going down quite a few pages to page 5. Item H, roads and driveway. The connecting drive is within 100 feet setback to the wetlands. And what the ordinance says, if no other reasonable alternative exists, the road and/or driveway setback requirement shall be not less than 50 feet horizontal distance, upon clear showing the applicant that appropriate techniques have been used to prevent sedimentation of the water body, tributary stream, or wetland. All of that area on the pavement does not flow directly off into the wetland. It goes by that and goes over to the stormwater area versus flushing right off the pavement there. And I think that's the main brunt of the questions. Oh, under Q, relative to clearing and removal, we have shown that we're doing less than 4 40% of the trees within the area, 4 inches and bigger, relative to the amount of clearing area. The marina is allowed use in this zone, and it there seems to be some language about a maximum opening of 10,000 square feet, which doesn't make sense if you're having a marina. You can't really do much in 10,000 square feet. And as I've stated previously on the submittal, the main thing typically on your shoreline zone, you want to keep that tree cover, one, to prevent erosion through that area for everything coming down. You don't want a developer or somebody just clear cutting in that water going off that or through that cleared area, which could cause erosion and get down to, of course, the lake and whatnot. In our case, we have provided a way to both store, detain, and treat that stormwater for that area that we have within the site and within the shoreline zone. So, and other than that, we had gone through the relative where we sit with all the approvals and whatnot. Looking at the plans, what I'm going to do is direct your attention to the top right-hand side. And this is going to be a little bit different than the plans you see. There's a garage door there to be able to bring boats into the building for display. That has shifted over a little bit to be able to make that turn into the building. The architect had it too far over. Our plans actually had it centered in the building, which didn't do very good with his very lovely architecture of the building. So what he has done is he's kind of reframed that front and moved the garage door over slightly. Very, very minuscule, but if you look in detail between what you have in your plans, in that plan, you'll see that that garage door has shifted over slightly. Relative to the plan to the left, the site plan, you probably really can't tell the difference, but on the left-hand side of the building, we've kind of reconfigured that retaining wall a little bit. We kind of had a curved section in there, and we just straightened it out for ease of construction. Other than that, on the construction plans themselves, we were requested by the water district not to have a mother-child tap where you come over with one single pipe and then come over off that with your fire line in your water service. They want the water service to go all the way back to the main, and they want the fire line to go all the way back to the main. So the plan has been changed to that. But from what you have, those are the only changes. But except for, well, going back to the lower right again, there's some highlighted area to the lower right of that plan. It's just your stamp for approval on the site plan, which was missing. And then the text you see in red, one of the things I forgot was, and Will brought that up in his comments. I think it's his recommendation relative to the sunset clauses, relative to the time of approval. And that's been put on there temporarily in red. And when we resubmit, you'll see the plans with those 3 changes made on the site plan. So that's our changes and where we're at to date. And
Okay. I just need to go back to our roll call. Kevin, I missed you on the roll call. I'm not sure you were there. It was my fault, but,
Oh, no, it's my fault. I had a brief video issue.
oh, okay. So Kevin is also a planning board member, and he's now present. All right, so this time, Rob, we're going to move to the public hearing, so because we will need that podium. I will now open the public hearing for the Jordan Bay Marina Port Harbor Marine. All persons wishing to express their opinion or ask questions must do so at the podium. Please first state your name and address. Comments must be directed to the chair. Obviously, if you're coming via Zoom or the phone call, you be the same, just state your name and address. Is requested that person speaking will restrict their comments to 5 minutes or less. And to try to refrain from repetitive comments. Lastly, please remember that decisions by the board are based upon the town ordinances. Therefore, the most appropriate comments will be those that address some portion of the ordinance where you feel the applicant does or does not meet those standards. So I will first open the public hearing. And to start with, is there someone from the Indian Point Association that is speaking for the Indian Point Association? Or is everybody just individuals? Okay, then whoever would like to speak first, if there is anyone that would like to speak, if you just proceed to the podium. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Barry McKay. I live at Indian Point Road in Raymond here, Raymond, Maine. Couple of concerns about the project.
Okay.
Number one, my land value. I mean, I'm literally my front door is less than 200 feet from this thing. Right now I've got a nice view of the woods. And
You're the house on the left, right, as you come driving in?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not representing the development, just myself right
Yep.
here. I do own one in there, but what I'm
Right.
talking about now is just the house. So my land value, I'm worried about that. I've always known that there was a commercial zone, the first 100 feet. And even Bill Hartley, we talked about it many times. He was going to, retire on the money he got for the land and maybe put a strip mall or something. So I've been prepared for that. But this is going beyond that into the residential zone. It's not limited to the commercial zone, this project, right?
Going in, I do not believe so. We're not going into the residential zone.
This, according to the map that's out there on the internet from your site, the official land use.
Our map.
Yeah, it's the first 100 feet and that's it. So
Right,
that's
but
my
thank you,
first.
we'll check.
Yeah, my first objection, I guess. But, you keep this thing to the first 100 feet, that commercial zone, I go away. I'm not against these guys expanding. I'm for it. I just don't want it to hurt me.
Yep.
And so there's that. And if they do end up putting this whole thing in the way it's, on the board up there, I can't even really see it, but I'd like to see some sort of a barrier, a visual barrier, so I don't have to look at boats on trailers rather than my, nature. At least something that would block the sound as well as the ugly boats. If you've been by there, those boats are pretty ugly. And as far as I heard Mr. McSorley here last meeting, I was just watching on the internet, describe the bowl. You catch the water and you let it out slowly.
Yeah,
Well-
right, retention.
Yeah, the detention. That's going to be in the hot, barren sun. All those trees are going to be gone. And that's going to heat the water. And I think that's going to hurt the runoff, which goes right into Indian Point. Now, I'm talking as an Indian Point owner, the association, just an owner. That goes into the land there and before it goes to the lake. And it's going to heat all that. It's just something I'd like to, have addressed if I could,
Okay.
is the water temperature. And the trees. We were at the zoning board meeting, I don't know, a month and a half, maybe, I don't know how long ago it was, but they were talking about that one strip of 100 feet that's zoned for commercial use. The rest is E something. I can't even think of what it was. But at the meeting, they mentioned that there's no wells in the area. And there aren't in Indian Point. There's public water supply coming into them. But I have a well at my house. I don't know, what that's going to do to the groundwater, what they're, proposing is going to shift or whatever, but I'm kind of concerned about that. Well, that's it. That's all I've got for now. There's more coming from the Indian Point side of me, but it's all over there.
Thanks, Barry.
Okay. Any questions?
No, but I do, before you leave, could we get it, what about this commercial and the map? I mean,
Yep, so the portion of the lot that's closest to 302 is in commercial, and then there is a transition, it switches to LRR1, which is one of our shoreland zones. That's limited residential recreational one. So that is not a commercial district, it's a residential district. It's a shoreland zone, basically.
and that's after 100 feet in.
Approximately, I think. I'm not exactly sure what that distance is, but that district does allow marina uses.
Right.
So there are some commercial uses allowed.
On the residential,
Yeah.
And is that where the border, the buffer switches from 15 to 30?
Yeah, if you look at the bottom right-hand
Okay.
corner drawing, you can see the dashed line that crosses the lot. That's the line that denotes the
Okay.
two.
Goes from the buffer goes from 15 to 30.
30,
Yeah, you can
that
see they
line.
expand there.
okay.
but the use of residential limited recreational, does that include a marina?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
That's an allowed
Yep.
use, yeah.
okay.
yeah.
Okay, there's someplace I can look at that description of that LR, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's right in the land use ordinance.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Yep, right on the website.
Thank you. Any more questions for me?
No, I don't. Does the board have any questions? Kevin? Nope. Thanks, Bart.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Sarna, coming again with a few new questions. So at 13 Flying Hulls Way over at Indian Point. So I'm speaking as a landowner over there and direct abutter in the rear on the wetland side. So I am immediately adjacent to both the wetland area that's owned by Port Harbor Marine and also the wetland area that's owned by Indian Point. So I'm butted on both sides. So in addition to my environmental concerns that I wanted to briefly address, I also wanted to talk about some of the concerns about the zoning and some of the long-term sort of visual and noise impacts, slightly along the lines of what Barry talked about with cutting a lot of this back and the buffer that we have now from 302. So in high season, when there's a lot of tourists in the area, yes, we can hear some of the road noise, but a lot of that is buffered by the trees most of the year. And even though we are adjacent to an mixed-use area, you do get a little bit of a feel of being kind of away and in nature there. So right now, sort of IPOA is sort of hidden as you drive by because there's the marina, then quickly you get to the lights and everything because there's that wooded area. My concern of pulling all that away and opening that up, even though there's going to be boats there, is it is very much more open to noise, additional, to me, light pollution from the additional lighting that's coming in, that's being proposed in the project. And there isn't any buffer between us anymore. And especially in the evening with those lights, if I wanted to sit in an area with highlights, I would stay in this, live in the city and not be out in the country and enjoy, coming to Maine, enjoying the stars and campfires in the evening in the summer. So also I wanted to address concerns about, with a lot of these changes, still that buffer, that 15 foot I've looked at, we're seeing a lot of this in overhead plan view versus perspective view. And so trees are very slim as they go up and then they branch out. So we see the canopy of the trees when we look in Google Earth, when we look in a lot of different areas. But if you look over there, a lot of the trees that would remain within that 15 to 30 foot buffer area are actually pretty skinny trees that aren't really going to do anything. And so, cutting down, it's not necessarily old growth forest in this area, but there are a lot of older trees that have been here for a long time. And removing that also, from sound and visual barrier also cuts down the filtration within the wetland area. So I have a lot of concerns about that. Let's see. What else? Sorry, I'll just try to go quickly. Also, I think, just having confidence in what will happen and making sure that all the requirements that are met, like whatever conditions that you guys put forth and ask to happen, right? If there are spills, if there are, looking at some of the forms that were submitted of like, if these things happen, these are gonna be the remediation measures, right? Like, we can't put the trees back, we can't fix the wetlands. Some of the same concerns Barry has about the water. From before, I've talked about, I've swum in this lake since I was 13 years old, and I've noticed changes in the water. People now, where we used to maybe get duckage, for swimmers once a year, are now pretty much, we can't utilize the lake and swim from June through the end of the season, right? So any concerns about, pollution, warmth of that water, that helps with the life of the parasites versus, people in there. And so I have a lot of concerns about the wildlife as well. And I've definitely noticed and kind of had, like before I kind of put some information together, which I'll give to you, Robert, to submit, but just concerns that before we used to see loons in that portion of the lake every day. This summer, I have not seen any at all. And that's something that, we're already seeing the impact of things that are happening in the area, and we can't go back and repair it. So that is kind of my piece that I want to say.
Thanks. Allison, before you go, you're talking about the buffer that's 15 and then switches to 30 feet. But
Even around the whole,
the rest of the tree buffers are not going down to 15 feet. Only that, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, and so I think looking at those other tree buffers, right, you're looking at it,
Yep.
an overhead view, you're not seeing, like right now, I can see that house and the boats that are there perfectly fine. So when I was there today, today looking from my property.
Right.
And so even removing the bit that's coming sort of on the left, and I have in sort of the previous view that showed everything that's being removed.
Yep.
Like, all of that taken away, what's basically left is young growth, trees and vegetation. So, yes, I do have physically a bigger barrier, but most of it is wetlands and marsh, and cattails. So that's why I think it would be helpful if people, again, don't want to say, go look at it again in the site view, but I think kind of look at it and measure, like taking measurements out of where those distances are. People don't have a concept of what 15 and 30 feet is. It's, 15 feet's like two tall people standing on each other's shoulders, so it's not that far.
So the point of view lighting, I don't think you will see that as a major impact. Lighting is restricted. Rob, 3 lights right now on the building. Has that changed?
There's probably 4 on the building, some that go along the access way.
Yep.
The photometrics is actually less than code,
Right.
and we talked about that.
Yep.
You want less lighting, and all the fixtures are gonna be full cut off, so they have to go down, they can't go.
And
So there's
nothing
no
will go
bleed
up.
out.
Because it looked like in your set of plans with some of the overview that there was some larger, and can I just kind of show in general, and I might be wrong in the placement of where they were.
Yep.
But they were, because this isn't that version, but there was something that was sort of more over this way, right? So I live here, and right now, everything that's all along here, I can see all the time, all the time, and sun shines over this way. So there was something in that other plan that was in this area. It showed like how many lumens, it was like 9,000 lumens in that area, and showed some of that bleed area. So just
Right.
ensuring that it's either down or faced away.
Yes, they definitely, they will all go down. You should not have a problem with light.
And if I can, just one last thing.
Yep.
Sort of say some of these, like I understand, and I also work in, doing things where plans need to be up to date. But just as we're looking and getting things together before meetings like this and seeing them, what we're provided on the internet, and as individuals, is not as up to date as what we're seeing here. So so that we can put together and like the updates that you talked about today, those elevations aren't on the website at all to look at.
You want me to address that?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
They're not material. The water line that's crossing the road is not going to affect you. The retaining wall that's on the existing marina side isn't going to affect you. So what's on the website is not substantially different than that.
We all have different opinions, I think, of what affects other people in the community, so I understand that. Okay.
All right, thanks, Allison. Someone else?
Yes. Robert Fontaine.
Could you wait? Who's ever on? No, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and go, and who's ever on the Zoom, we'll get right back to you. Go ahead.
Okay, that's really,
Yep.
that's really brief. John Salas, 13 Pine Hall Way. In addition to some of the points that we've just listened to, Mr. McTorley, I know you mentioned that the trees, and I want this to be verified. You mentioned that the amount of trees that are going to be cut away is not exact. You said you have a different way of treating the water runoff because the amount of trees may be cut more than what was supposed to be per code. Is that correct? I want that verified. Actually, I don't want to ask him directly because I know you have to address it.
Yeah, but that,
It sounded like his comment that he made earlier.
just now? Today?
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's in Will's memo, Q. I think it's Q. Is it Q? Yeah, Q.
You were stating something to the effect that you were going to be able to treat
It's,
the water.
Rob, it's the applicant proposes clearings exceeding the maximum as allowed by section 15Q, which is the shoreline zone. The applicant states that the purpose of the shoreline ordinance is to protect water quality, which is provided by the proposed grassed under-drained soil filters. Therefore, the clearing, i.e. additional clearing, that is usually allowed. Therefore, the clearing will have negligible impact.
So if it's not following code, but you're using a different substitute, how do you guys decide that? If it's like either you have a code that should be followed, or there's a code with a
Yep, it's a good question.
substitution.
We normally rely on the engineering
Right.
to meet the standards that we would achieve. That's what we would normally do. But let me follow up with that.
Sure.
Can I ask Rob? Can you show us where that area is that Q refers to on the map?
Can you hear me? If you look at the site plan here, this is your zoning for the shoreland zone, the LRR1 zone. So this is your Q goes everything from here down to the water, okay? And if you look at the distances that you typically look at shoreline, other communities have 250 feet. That's down right about right here. 600 feet comes across right here, a little further towards the lake than the zoning line.
Yep.
So this is the whole area from here down that's affected by Q. Now, of course, we're keeping a substantial buffer here. We're doing, keeping green area here, and we're doing water quality here to, one, prevent the runoff, which has the erosive potential, and two, to treat that water that the woods would normally treat. And like down here in Indian Point, there's none of that. That was developed a long time ago. That stuff goes directly to the lake, and that doesn't have any type of detention or treatment or anything like that. Okay?
Yep.
So while you're there, can you explain why you need or you're proposing to remove more than is normally allowed?
Marina is a allowed use in the LRR1 zone. The way the zone, the Q is written, it's a maximum of 10,000 square feet clearing. That's typically what you restrict a residential lot to. You're not going to fit much of a marina on 10,000 square feet. If your marinas are allowed in the LLR1 zone, they're a water, I can't remember how it's defined in your code, but water function dependent use, it's intended to be within the shoreland zone. You don't put a marina 800 feet away from the water, right?
What area of trees are you talking about, though? That you would do more cutting than is
The trees that we're taking down in the shoreland zone are right here and
Okay.
right here.
okay. So nothing closer to the water than that?
No, no, and we, of course, we've left this whole buffer. You know, we are not going to impinge on the easement other than where our outfall goes. That, of course, Portland Pipeline comes through every 2 years and
Cuts.
slashes that down. So,
Rob, do you have an exact area of what you are proposing to clear?
no, I don't have that right off the top of my head.
Do you know, are these forested wetlands?
Yes, all of the wetlands that we're impacting are forested wetlands. And the code says, and that's another section of Q, where it says you have to have a 100-foot buffer to the wetland. Well, it excludes forested wetlands from that.
Yeah.
So we don't need to have a 100-foot buffer from the wetlands, but we have provided a 25-foot setback on all the wetlands that are being retained here. Other than, of course, the area that's getting cleared regularly by the Portland Pipeline, but of course we have nothing that goes directly across that. It goes into our stormwater system and not directly across that.
Okay, I think the other part of the question is, and Will or Alex, is that, is there engineering studies that, that suggest or confirm that what the retention pond is in fact an acceptable?
I don't think you can waive that section of the ordinance.
Well, I mean,
I don't, maybe I don't know if you
I guess
disagree to that,
that
but.
was certainly my question.
So they're allowed to create an opening within the shoreland zone portion of the lot, so everything below the dash line. They can create an opening of 10,000 square feet or 25% of the lot area within the shoreland zone.
okay,
So I added that up using Google Earth, and that's approximately 43,000 square feet of area that can be cleared within the shoreland zone portion of the lot. I don't know if you can try to figure out what you've got cleared there, but, and that's a pretty good size area.
mm-hmm,
That's that's an acre
right,
of land. So I don't think they could clear the entire portion of the lot within the shoreland zone, but they can probably open quite a bit of it. So that's probably what we need to figure out is how much are they proposing to open within the shoreland zone. And then the second part of that was the portion within the setback to the wetlands, which I think he answered. And that's a forested wetland, doesn't actually fall under the shoreland zone unless it's considered a freshwater wetland, which it would need to meet certain criteria, which they haven't identified, so.
okay. Does that answer some of your questions?
Some of it.
Okay.
From what I'm seeing from this is roughly the idea. I'm just going to show you really quick.
Sure.
This was the trees that I'm seeing as being removed that was presented before. This was presented this evening. This
Yeah.
is from your guys'.
Yeah, that's the original submittal.
Right.
So this is
Do we have-
a lot of the.
Yeah, we have it, it's all that.
Yeah, I'm
so
just
these
curious how much
trees,
acreage that is. What
Oh,
is-
yeah, they'll have to figure that out.
And this touches a lot to Barry's point as far as being able to have a visual barrier between his lot and the marina. In regards to saying that you're not going to be able to build a very feasible marina without removing a lot of trees. Every business has to follow the same rules. You can't just say it's because it's a marina, you can change the rules. one of the other things that I noted was the wording in the codes. I know you guys are updating your coding and your wording and such. And I was looking at that, and a lot of it relates directly to this proposal, almost word for word, directly back and forth. But some of the things we're saying is like whether there's going to be a visual barrier or visual disturbance, a light disturbance, noise disturbance. These issues are, what's quoted in the proposal here. Yep. My question would be, how is it going to be determined that that does not happen? Because there's no study right now saying where we are currently at as far as a visual, noise, or any other disturbance. And then once this is put in, how are we going to measure that? Because there's nothing at this point saying that we're at 0, and now we're going to have a 10% increase, a 50% increase.
And what's acceptable?
How do we do this? It seems like it's an open, you're just saying, it's a lot of words saying that we're not going to do it. So I don't know how this is ever measured. So.
Yeah, the visual is something that the board, not on this project, but has struggled with on a number of projects. It's very subjective.
Yeah, I remember when we walked out when we were trying to do the marina out on the water, and doing the finger, covering up the marina and such. But walking, from Barry's point of view, from his house and what he's going to see, everything at the marina. So I'm just a lot of words, but there's no measurement is where I'm concerned on how this is going to work out. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay.
Something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Okay, now that,
Sorry, you guys. I'll get this,
somebody from Zoom that wanted to speak?
Yes. Robert, my name's Robert Fontaine, and I'm from Vice President of the Indian Point Campground Association, and I have been hearing some confusing statements.
Robert, are you speaking for yourself or for the association?
For the association.
Okay.
And for myself also. About 30 years ago, I came to Indian Point Campground. At that time, the preserve was called Loon Echo Preserve, owned by Jordan Bay Marina. I have requested to speak tonight because I'm concerned for the wetland abuts Indian Point Campground. Our concern is that the integrity of the wetland. The wetland is a service, as a filter to contaminants in our deeded Indian Point Preserve. It's a working wetland that purifies the water to our preserve and ultimately Sebago Lake and our Indian Point beach. Our beach is approximately 30 feet away from the mouth of the preserve. Additionally, the preserve is a home of a multitude of aquatic and wildlife flora. Port Harbor Marina has been submitted a proposal to fill in the wetlands, build an office building with restrooms, septic tank with a leach field, boat storage, a boat service area, which will include changing oil, hydraulic fluids for servicing boats, including loud engine noise pollution. We believe that the proposed expansion is a danger to the environment and surrounding the Indian Point Campground and Lake Sebago. In conclusion, our concern is that the negative effect that the Port Harbor Marine expansion will have on our preserve and impact on the quality of life of our bordering members. I would like to invite representatives to meet, walk through and our preserve and see that they may see for themselves the devastating consequences that would result should the expansion of Port Harbor Marine get approval. Please imagine for a moment that that's in your own backyard. It's time to stop these intrusions Please help us live our lives in peace. Don't let Port Harbor Marine smother our preserve and wetlands like they did to our beach with boat slips. Let us show you what they are really doing without camouflage. Don't be misled. See for yourself. Notice the proposal that we are not showing. The preserved maps can be deceiving. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and also seeing is believing. Thank you in allowing me to speak, and have a good evening. And it's just unbelievable what's going on here tonight, and the misunderstanding I have with Port Harbor Marine.
Thank you, Robert. Is there anybody else on Zoom that wants to speak? Is there anyone else in? Someone coming?
Mr. Chair, Keith Richard.
Yes.
Good evening, Chair O'Neill. Always good to appear before you and members of the board. I'm here on behalf of Wayne Quagliaroli, Edith Tantalus, and you've heard from several others, Barry McKay, Allison Sarna, Robert Fontaine, as well as Rachel Sarna. I think that one of the themes that we're hearing tonight is that Port Harbor is expanding further their development and improving their marina, and it is continuing to impact the folks at Indian Point. And I think the board needs to consider everything within its power to try to mitigate the impact of this marina and its expansion. The expansion of the slips, that's happened, and that's done. And they have to live with that. But I think that now that we're in another phase of development, it has to be put into the context of some of the concerns that were expressed before, and how this is another step down the path of further development. Every landowner in the town of Raymond, the planning board has to try to figure out how to balance people's rights and their interests. And that's not an easy job, but I really think that there needs to be more protections for Indian Point, recognizing what it is they're being subjected to with each expansion that affects their property rights. This board has an independent obligation to apply your ordinances regardless of what other agencies might be reviewing the project. That includes DEP on a NERPA permit. It includes MDOT, any other agencies. This board has to apply the town of Raymond's ordinances. One of the challenges we have that Allison alluded to is the fact that we have preliminary sketches of what the building is going to be and exactly what is going to be constructed. So it's hard to offer specific comments. The parking issue is a huge issue because if the board recalls, parking was one of the major debates and conditions that was placed on the prior expansion project. And it's very concerning that Port Harbor is looking to get a waiver from the parking when we already know that was a major issue before when this last came up for expansion. I also think that the waiver is not from 30 parking spaces down to 19. It's my understanding that the building that's proposed is 60 by 100, which would be 60,000 square feet. Your ordinance requires one space per 200 square feet. However, this is a 2-story building, so therefore there are 2 levels of that footprint. And I think the standard is actually closer to 60 spaces that are required under the ordinance. As to section 10.1F and the internal landscape islands, they haven't met the standard. They haven't shown anything that establishes why they don't have to meet the standard, and they should be required to meet the standard to deal with impervious surface area with the new parking lot and impervious surface area that will create. Lastly, and there's been a fair amount of discussion about this, the shoreline zoning ordinance requirement at section 15Q2, they are going to clear more than is allowed under the ordinance. They can't get a waiver from that. The explanation that we're hearing from Mr. McSorley is that they don't meet the standard, but they want to make up a different standard for them that isn't what's in your ordinance, because they're Port Harbor, we're a marina. We think if we actually, let me tell you what the purpose of your ordinance is. We meet the purpose. We don't meet the letter of your ordinance, but we meet the purpose, and therefore we should be approved for that. And that's just simply not how the planning board should be applying its ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the Zoom that would like to speak? Anyone else here that would like to speak? Okay. I'd just like to talk about a couple of things, if I could just to clarify. I know that and for Mr. Fontaine, the board has conducted a site walk, and we have looked and walked the land, so that we do know the area that is being developed. The area that is a concern, both Barry, to you and to, there was, I think, definitely Allison and, well, not so much, but there was one other individual on the sidewalk that was concerned about the 15 and 30. And I think the board would concur that as that 15 foot is cut, there will be very little visual interference, if we use the right word, between Indian Point and the marina. But some of that is due to the fact that the 15 feet on the Indian Point side does not have any underbrush either. So I'm wondering, I mean, the board can't do this, but what I'm because the 15 feet is the ordinance. If Indian Point would be willing to talk with Port Marine in maybe a coordinated landscaping of that 15-foot section on either side of the property line, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but on the other side, on the Indian Point side of that 15-foot area is leach field and parking lot. So, I think you're looking at cars or you're looking at boats. Either probably, less the cars look better than the boats. I think you're still kind of in that same, not a very great view. But I think that might be something, again, the board cannot do anything with the 15 feet because the 15 feet is what's in the ordinance. But if you wanted to talk to Rob about that, about a coordinated landscaping, I think that might alleviate some of the concerns and also shield your leach field and parking lot.
According to your tool.
Is there somebody-
I have a question.
Sure, who am I talking to? Rob? Robert?
Yes,
Yeah, is that you?
yes,
Oh,
yes.
do you have
Am I to understand that there's a removal of 200 trees? I heard 200, 150. Now it's mentioned slightly. I'd like to know how many trees do they plan to remove?
Yeah, we don't know that yet, but we're gonna calculate that out.
Oh, okay, okay, and you're gonna replace them by saplings? I heard 2-inch diameter saplings. Is that saplings? Is that still in effect?
Oh, no, I don't think so. No, I know nothing of that. I don't think.
Yeah, well, it was said, this is a inconsistency I'm talking about here. And we know if we put in saplings, we all know it takes about 20 years better for saplings to grow to come anywhere near to making a buffer
Oh, I
for the
think.
sound and noise of Route 302.
Yeah, I think, Robbie, you're talking about the plantings that are going around the building and along the 302, not along your, not along the buffer between you and Port Harbor. So the saplings have nothing to do with Indian Point, as far as the buffer goes.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, well, okay, because one of my most concerns also is the carbon monoxide when he had floats in service out of the water. Carbon monoxide is going to be going right over into abutting people, and that's not healthy. You know, it's very hard to breathe. There's too much of it, and it's a silent killer, as far as I'm concerned. So that's a very dangerous thing. If we're going to have anything like that,
Okay,
coming
thank
at
you,
us
sir.
to breathe that kind of stuff. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Robert. One other thing, either for Rob or Will, or actually Alex, we've talked about those retention ponds before, and I know that heated water coming out of those retention ponds, it has been an issue, or is an issue, on the environmental side.
Yeah, so these ponds are actually called under-drain soil filters. So the water actually flows into the pond, and then it filters down through a media layer, which tends to cool the water off. It's one of the reasons why DEP has created these as an allowed treatment practice. And then it gets picked up in an underdrain and then discharged out. So it actually cools the stormwater to some extent before it
Before it's
gets
discharged.
discharged.
So it doesn't sit there and heat up, like when you say retention pond, we're not really
Correct.
talking about
It doesn't
ponds.
have a permanent pool of water in
Okay.
it all the time.
And those retention ponds, how far are they from the actual lake?
Rob, do you want to?
450?
I mean, it's,
They're before, they empty into the wetlands.
that's what I'm thinking.
250 feet is about right here. 600 feet is about right here. And these are the two ponds.
Okay, so
Not ponds,
there's
under-drain
there's
soil
good,
filters.
good distance.
They're a good distance, yeah. And what they do is they discharge out, and then they'll filter through the forested wetland, and then make their way down there.
Barry, does that answer your question on the heat?
Yes, it does, but
Yep.
the wetlands to me is what is flowing through, cleaning the contaminants that's going into the preserve. They keep forgetting to mention that preserve. That preserve goes right out onto Sebago Lake and our beach.
Okay.
Don't forget that. That's what we're talking about here.
Okay.
Those wetlands.
I got it, Robert. I just want to ask Barry a question, please. Barry, does that answer your question? Yes, please.
Well, I've heard the explanation, and again, there's not, you can't manage what you can't measure.
Right.
I don't hear any measurements. Some study or just at least an estimation of what it is now and what it's going to be would kind of be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, where would that, the DEP publish that stuff?
These BMPs that are allowed under the stormwater law
Yeah.
are specific because of that concern. That is the number one concern for water quality treatment, was putting off heated water into watersheds,
Right.
whether it be a stream or a lake or whatnot. And that's why on a wet pond now, your wet pond doesn't just discharge straight off out of the wet pond. It actually, there's a bench that it has to go down through to cool the water, similar to the under-drain soil filter. And that's why MDEP has come up with these BMPs that we have to use versus what we used in the olden days, is because of the treatment and cooling of the discharge.
Yeah, I understand all that, Rob, but where would Barry be able to read that?
So DEP does not publish in their best management practices information on, it's going to cool the water by so many degrees.
Right.
There is literature out there, if you want to search for it on the internet, that will give you some guidance on that. It's not going to be consistent everywhere because it depends on how hot the water is before it goes in,
right.
versus how cool the water is before it goes in.
Yeah.
So there's no easy, standard, consistent measurement of an under-drain soil filter is going to cool the water by 10 degrees.
Yeah.
There's just,
It's not there.
it's not feasible to provide an answer like that.
Okay,
Can't forbid it.
Barry,
Yeah, just one last thing.
I don't know, you're right 3 times, Barry. You
Yeah,
get
it is.
it?
Well, obviously you can't measure it. Right now, it's nice and cool under the shade. There's gonna be hot sun. I know by this that, I don't like it, but I have to accept it. Let's put it that way, so.
Yeah, I don't think the water is going to be, I think what your initial concern was the water would be sitting there and warming before it discharged, and that's not the case.
That's not the case, but
Right.
it still will be warmer. I mean, it's.
Yes, it's still most likely. All right, is there anyone else in the audience?
One short point?
Sure.
Again, the lighting issue that I know that was mentioned, I know we're going to have controlled lighting with the landscaping and such like that. But by removing the trees and having that a parking lot, you have to think about lights from cars coming in at night, you know, just to remove their boats and everything else. That's going to be a direct line right at the whole Indian Point. And they also flash by. Currently, we don't have that because what you're seeing with the inlet for where the boats are, the headlights are all going directly out to the lake. But you put a parking lot right there, now they're all turning directly into Indian Point. So
Yeah.
all the headlights, you know, that would be circling around a parking lot.
Right.
So that'll be as far as one of the visual things we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I know, I understand, but I think that just 'cause what we've been told at any rate is that the only people bringing the boats in are going to be the employees, and they're only going to be working
Okay.
during the day, and so that it's not going to be an evening light show.
We have had the emergency crew come in at
Oh,
night, and
yes.
we've noticed the flashing lights and everything else.
Sure.
Going down just the runway and flashing into Indian Point. And listen to it too. So
So I
Okay.
guess if I could ask on that point, so people in the summer using their boats and that sort of thing, how much traffic do you get after dark in the summer?
Not much, not much. Most of the traffic is during the day. People go out on the lake during the day. They're not usually out on the lake at night. Very, very infrequent. Mr. Will wants to.
Well,
I guess relative to the buffering, I guess primarily along the side there, the 15-foot and the 30-foot.
right.
I remember I went out on the site walk with you. I mean, those trees are fairly mature in there, not a lot of understory. One consideration that the board may want to look at there is, I think you've done it on other projects as well, is you could require a stockade fence down that sideline, leave the buffer of trees, and put it on the marina side of those trees, and that would go a long ways in terms of limiting visual, obviously through the stockade fence. It would also take care of a light issue if there are vehicles that are coming in there after dark, in terms of lights headed towards Indian Point. I think it could resolve some of the buffer issues that we're hearing. So something the board may want to consider.
If I could ask, on other projects, Will, that you might be familiar with, how high of a stockade fence does one need to do that?
I mean, I think a typical stockade fence is 6 feet tall. I don't think you need anything more than that, really, because it's, again, for lights especially, you're really not going to need anything much higher than that.
That's good.
Mhm. Okay.
Right.
You-
Put something out.
That's the guy.
The nearest residents are here and down along here. You'll notice that, and we showed this or said this on the site walk. Here's the 30 foot, but before we even get to those residential units, we have widened that buffer. And I measured it from Mr. McKay's property line over is 125 feet. I think it's well in excess on most of these in addition, and it's certainly substantially more than 30 feet on the one residence here. So You know, when we laid out this project, we took that into account, that we wanted to make sure that we left some buffering there beyond what was necessary. So when we got down into the 30-foot area, we made sure that we didn't go into this corner. So,
Okay. I am going to, anyone else? Question, comments? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing. But I do want to just go through and make sure that we, for board purposes, and if I miss something, please correct, but I think our biggest issue is the clearing of the amount of trees between, in the LRR1 area. As to what,
Bob, I did do I just did a quick measurement
Yeah.
on the plan with the scale, and it looks as though we got a pretty big problem. It looks like they're about 50,000 square feet over,
50,000 square feet over?
based on the measurement I just took, yeah.
Okay.
It looks like and that's really approximate, but it looks like the opening within the shoreline zone would be around 94,000 square feet, and the maximum allowed would be 43,000. So it's quite a bit over.
Is
Okay.
that because it includes the existing pipeline?
I actually didn't even count any of the pipeline. I just counted the area within that, the lighter green area shown there in the parking lot, obviously.
And as far as we know, and I've looked over shoreline zoning a little bit, but as far as we know, we're pretty confident that's a non-waivable.
Yeah, it's not waivable.
Okay.
Okay, going, we do have, Mr. Richards, we did talk about the island parking areas, and the board was fairly happy with the design without the islands, given that it was that small area. We do need to look into the parking spaces. Will, do you know if it's 2-story, 3-story, or is it just square foot? Rob, do you know?
we do have 2 stories. The bottom story is bathrooms, common area for the bathrooms, which are used by the entire site, and then the garage area on the bottom.
No, yeah, I realize there's 2 stories, but is the square foot calculated for the car requirements based upon the square footage of the imprint?
Yeah,
Building
just the
imprint?
1 floor.
Just the imprint?
Yeah, and once again, when we came before you, we've told you based upon our experience and what we operate now for the marina, what we need out front for parking
Yeah, I
is
understand.
not 30. And I also want to point out that there was a condition relative to addressing parking with the last approval.
Yep.
And we put cameras out there, and we have submitted into the town documentation that there is no parking problem.
Already cleared. Visual, the noise, visual noise, and I think the lighting is pretty much taken care of. Visual noise, very subjective, we'll discuss that.
Rob, can I ask you a question? I can't quite recall. Coming in from 302 along the 15-foot buffer, when you hit that much broader buffer area, from 302 to there, directly across, are there any other houses or mobile homes or anything?
There are no houses, that's also a commercial zone, but there's no houses there. That's where their leach field is, I believe, and they store boats there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, sir, what do we do now?
So, we've got to address this 15Q
Yep.
issue. To me, I think we need to know an exact number. I mean, Alex has come up with a approximate.
number,
So I think we need to know what is the actual number for that.
Yep.
before we can really move forward in terms of deciding how to deal with that.
Right.
Given that it's non-waivable, it obviously puts the board in a tough position, because if they don't meet it,
They don't need it.
they would need to
Zoning Board of Appeals?
go to ZBA for that?
I
or-
don't even think that's something you get a variance for.
Okay.
Rob?
State shoreline is 250 feet, and your shoreline zone is 600 feet.
Right.
You know, the intent of the state statute, which you've gone beyond, is for additional protection. And what we're saying is that we're providing that protection. You don't have the erosion because of the system we're putting in, and we're providing that treatment that would otherwise be there if you clear cut it and left it.
Yeah, but I don't think you're gonna get anybody on the board to agree with that we should not uphold the 600 feet. I mean, I don't wanna speak for the board, but we have not done that
Okay.
in the past. Everything that has come out of the town has always been water quality is the #1 issue. So I don't think the board's gonna be leaning towards, in a direction of trying to attain a waiver for the 600 feet. I mean, it has come up before, people have complained about it, but it is what it is.
Okay.
So variances will be granted.
And yeah, I don't want to speak for the board. I mean,
No, I couldn't agree more. I
Okay.
would be absolutely opposed to any reduction of the requirement of the shoreline.
okay, okay. So,
So variances may be granted only from dimensional requirements, including but not limited to lot width, structure height, % of lot coverage, and setback requirements. But since this is within the shoreland zone, you can't get a variance unless you meet the hardship criteria, which the first one is that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted, which they don't meet. So it wouldn't be possible.
okay. Then I would suggest that we move the project back to the table. I don't think there's any reason to continue because things are going to change. We retable the issue and wait for the revised project.
Yeah, it
Is
seems
that-
to me that this, because of this issue, it could impact many other things that are being planned, including the location of the building and
Yeah.
on and on.
Rob,
Can I approach the board and throw something out here?
you can do it in 2 minutes?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll go back and investigate this further with Alex, okay? What I was thinking, I know this is purely, says it in the shoreland zone, but we hear there's concerns for the neighbors for buffering. What if we were to increase the buffering from 302 all the way down to pick up that entire square footage relative to that whatever area we figure it has to be. So if it's 50,000 square feet, you know, maybe we have 25 and 25. It increases the buffer for our neighbors and provides more tree cover within the watershed.
But it's,
I mean, to me, if doing that would comply with the requirement of,
be careful, because it technically might not comply with the requirement exactly, because it's not gonna all be within the LRR1. You're proposing some of it in the commercial
Okay.
zone. So you've gotta be aware that
Right.
that's what he's suggesting.
gotcha.
But I mean, I mean, you can suggest it, but you're not going to get a decision tonight, I think, from the board as to whether or not we agree with it.
Plus, if it still goes against shoreline zoning, we can't do it.
Right. All right, let's move forward. Do we have a motion?
Move to table the project.
There's a motion to table the Port Harbor Marine application until the following meeting, or at which time plans are resubmitted. Does that sound appropriate? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Or second?
Mark did.
Mark beat you to it? Mark second?
Yep, Mark beat me.
Mark likes the second, you know?
Couldn't do it last
Yeah,
month,
see, you got cut out.
Quick.
Is there any other discussion? Everyone, okay, all those in favor of tabling? Anyone opposed? Okay, motion is approved. Okay, Rob? So before you guys go, Indian Point, just in our procedures, if the project comes back and it is not viewed as a major revision, which I'm guessing this would be, we are not required to have another public hearing. Okay, so if you can watch, whenever this comes back, the first item would be to determine whether or not it was a major revision. If it is a major revision, then you would all receive notices again for a public hearing. If it's not viewed as a major revision, then you would not receive notices for another public hearing. Okay, but you would, you wouldn't receive the notice, but obviously it would be published that it was going to happen.
And we could request to see what's been submitted.
Oh yeah, sure, most definitely, it should be available.
Still be valid, right? Those wouldn't go away.
I'm sorry?
Our concerns wouldn't just go away.
Oh, no. Okay, that was it. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you.
I would guess it's a major revision, but Will pulled a difficult project one here. Should have said no to this one, Will. You should have said no to this one when offered to do the engineering. Thanks, Will. Oh, jeez, I always forget Kevin. Kevin, was you okay with the tabling?
Yes,
Okay, I'm sorry. Forget to click up there.
I did raise my hand.
Oh, okay, thanks.
That's what we got Sandy for, to check up on that.
Yeah, exactly. Out of sight, out of mind. All right, we'll move to our new business, is the public hearing for the Nicole Starrett Snow and Landscaping Service. There is some background to this that before we discuss.
I can't believe it either. How the hell does a guy get this far? No.
It's Bill. Bill's talking.
Whoever Bill is.
Sorry?
Somebody needs to mute that guy.
I took care of it.
Thanks, Andy.
If she could only do that to us, so.
Who is better to give us the background, the board the background? I know I have some pieces of information, but I know the board does not,
For this project?
this project.
Sure.
You want to do it?
Sure. Oh, you,
No, I prefer not to.
Oh.
I don't think I have all the pieces.
oh. Okay, maybe I don't have all the pieces. This is before you tonight as a site plan application. I do believe that this did go through the zoning board of appeals for a conditional use. It's for a property located on 402 Webb's Mill, just down the road. The applicant wishes to put a landscape and yard maintenance company in the back, I'll call it the backyard for all intents and purposes. It'll be served by an access road that goes by the current residence. We really didn't get a whole lot of site plan material. We've got an aerial image. We don't have a boundary plan. I know the fire department had some concerns about access, as did we. And we do feel that the property is important due to the fact that this isn't commercial use in a residential neighborhood. So we have concerns about vehicle access, relation to the buildings, to the environment, with regards to what's being stored, noise. Obviously, I do believe they run a snow plowing business, so I'm sure there's some night hours that may have some issues with the neighbors. I think there's some need for some buffers. And I believe these things can be worked out. It's just that with the plan that we have, we just don't have that detail yet. So I do think it's appropriate to let the applicant, make their pitch, and then we can get into the specifics of each one of the site plan standards.
So this is a commercial development in a residential zone.
Correct.
And my understanding is the zoning board of appeals has already approved
The use, right?
this use.
Yeah. What you're responsible for now is how that use fits with the neighborhood. As far as buffers and noise, you gotta follow the site plan standards that you would for any other business and apply them to this business, but I think you gotta use a little bit more, because you gotta look at the consideration of the commercial use up against a residential zone and use.
So are we being asked to approve the development of the commercial project in the residential district?
You are being asked to approve the commercial use.
But the zoning board of appeals has already given them.
For the use, you're being asked to comply that use against our site plan standards. This commercial business has to now come in for a site plan review. You're reviewing the site plan conditions.
It's not just the, say, construction use on a residential property, which does allow you to have 5 outside pieces of equipment or vehicles parked. Is that what we're reviewing, or is it
Yes.
an entire commercial use and go by the commercial regulations?
So it's a mix of the two. It's the first one.
Right.
However, they still have to meet all of the performance standards
Correct.
in the ordinance.
Okay, so no more than 5 vehicles parked outside, trucks.
That still applies, yep.
Equipment.
Yep.
And they can have things, equipment if it's inside a barn or garage there, additional pieces.
I think they could. I think that particular section just limits what is actually exposed outside.
When you have to look at
Or
the
stored
performance
outside.
standards such as thing as noise, buffers, stormwater, circulation.
Storage materials.
Yeah, storage of materials, all those things you would in a normal site plan.
Yeah, so essentially what's happened here is you guys have to view this as though that use is allowed in the zone, even though it's not normally.
Right.
In this case, the ZBA approved it, so now it's allowed for this lot,
Okay,
should they get site plan approval
okay.
for the actual use.
All right, and we're looking at buildings that are already constructed.
Yeah.
But I think few of those are temporary type structures.
Okay,
Yeah, it's after the fact, so the work's been done already.
right.
Yeah.
So it's not grandfathered by any stretch of the means because it's after the fact.
So you guys need to look at this as though the work hasn't been done
Okay,
when you're approving.
okay.
That help?
Yeah, that did help. Is that okay with everybody, what we're doing? Okay. Then, before I do the public hearing, then I would open it up to the applicant and ask them if they would present the project. Are they here? Is that you?
No.
They're on,
I'm here. My name is Nicole Starrett. I'm on Zoom.
okay. Could you tell us what you intend to do, please?
Yes, absolutely. And I do want to apologize for the state of our site plan. It was thrown together as quickly as we could to qualify for the October meeting that was then postponed. So it is a work in progress, and we're continuing to work on it with Mainland. So, as I said, my name's Nicole Starrett. My husband, Ben, and I operate and own Starrett Snow and Landscape Services. And despite the name, we have actually gone away from snow plowing starting this year. So if that is a concern of anyone, we are no longer providing commercial or residential snow plowing. We operate a primarily landscaping and construction business, and have since we purchased the home in 2015. It started as a very, very small business and has grown substantially, which has required the need for this site plan and everything that goes along with it. I've gone through, along with Ben, the 2 memos that I received from Sebago Technics and Raymond Fire and Rescue, and I'm prepared to go through each of those points as necessary. But basically, the summary of the project is we have 4 temporary shelters down there that have been constructed to store equipment and as well as our personal items. The only permanent structure is a lean-to was on the property before we bought it.
Okay, yeah, I think probably at this point it would be beneficial to go through the memo. Is that everyone?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want me to just go through it point by point?
That would be best, yes, please.
Okay. All right, I'm going to start with the Sebago Technics memo. So starting under section A, the site plan review standards, I'll start with number 1, which is the preservation of landscaping. And it was just regarding the preservation of a natural buffer on the lot. When we purchased the property, it was an old Christmas tree farm, and many of the trees were very tall, diseased balsam fir trees. And several years ago, we did a timber harvest and cleared the diseased trees and anything that wasn't naturally occurring on the lot to make space for our equipment. In doing so, we left a natural buffer. I don't have the exact dimensions, and I'm not sure if they're on the site plan. They probably need to be better defined on the site plan. And this is just natural growth that we have allowed to come up around the edges of the property that aren't covered by the driveway and the temporary structures that we've put up. And we're allowing those to grow. We have no intention of removing any more of that buffer. If anything, it'll fill in more with time. So I'm not necessarily concerned about that one, but I'm happy to answer any other questions about that specific thing. The next one, number 2, is the relation of proposed buildings to the environment. And this just asks about what's stored in our temporary storage structures and what we have down there. Currently in our temporary buildings, we store hay, which is used for seeding in new grass for landscape projects, tools for working on our equipment, equipment when it's not out on a job site itself. We also have a 500-gallon diesel tank, which is contained within a concrete, it's actually half of a septic tank for secondary confinement, so the diesel is properly managed and does not leak. We also have a small amount of salted sand and mulch contained in one of the coverets down there. And this is again contained by a small paved area and concrete waste blocks to avoid any runoff from those materials. And the only other things stored down there other than vehicles when they're parked are some of our personal items, such as a boat and a camper. So that's all that's contained down there. Number 3 covered vehicular access. It just said the site will utilize existing street access off Webb's Mills Road and business will need to provide handicap accessibility for parking areas and adequate space for making large radius turns over the existing gravel surfaces. And it just also mentions that previous parking spaces are not marked, nor is the necessary count disclosed. We have 3 dump trucks that we pull in and out of the site regularly, so large radius turns are not an issue. Down there, there's plenty of space in the gravel area to operate large vehicles as needed. We also don't have a designated parking area currently because we don't serve customers at our location. Our parking is only for employees and our own equipment. However, if we need to designate a parking area, including a handicap if necessary, we will absolutely do so. I think that also kind of covers number 4, which was parking and circulation. I was just asking for more information on parking, which we can define if needed. Number 5 is surface water drainage. This one I don't have a lot of information on. We are still working with Mainland, who did our site plan, to calculate our phosphorus control points and adjust our site plan as needed for that. So I'm open to any commentary on that, but I don't have a final say on that just yet. Number 6 covers utilities, and that's a really simple one because there are no utilities down there. We may put them in at a future date, but that would be with proper approval from the town. Number 7 is special features, specifically asking about material storage on site. I sort of covered this before, but material storage is limited to sand, stone, gravel, etc. in very small amounts left over from projects. It typically will stay on our property for a week or two until it can be used on the next project, and then it's cleaned up. So we don't have any large piles of sand or stone that stay there for a long time. Number 8 covers exterior lighting. We currently do not have any exterior lighting on our property down there, and we do not plan on putting any up anytime soon. We don't want to be a nuisance for our neighbors and try to keep things as dark as possible down there when we're not down there. Number 9 is emergency vehicle access, and this is just concerning the tightness of the road and making sure that emergency vehicles can access down there. I'd just like to reiterate that we have dump trucks and trailers, and they have gotten down there fine thus far, and we can tweak it as necessary, but I don't see it as a concern right now for emergency vehicle access. Number 10 is landscaping, and that one just says no landscaping is planned on the sidelines, which is the only areas we are concerned to keep a buffer from the neighbors for vehicle lights and noise of equipment in a residential neighborhood. As I said before, we have a natural buffer that is growing there and will continue to grow there. Any landscaping that we may install would not infringe on that. If anything, it would add to it. The very last one, number 11 on this memo, is just other considerations, and it specifically mentions solid waste, anything like that. We don't keep any solid waste on the site. Anything that we need to take care of is taken to the dump, so that I don't believe is a concern. So that pretty much covers the Sebago Technics memo. Should we have any discussion on that before we move to the other one, or should I go through the other one as well?
The other one you're talking about, the fire department?
The fire department, yes.
Yeah, don't go that one yet.
Okay.
Do you want to open up for
Yeah.
public comment?
I just, before we go though, I want to characterize it. We don't really have a complete application.
I would not deem it, I would suggest it not be deemed complete because we're missing some important components.
Right, so we're looking maybe as a site plan, sketch plan, excuse me?
We could look at it as a sketch plan, yes. But all you're doing is basically, there's no vote on a sketch plan. You're just giving them feedback at this
Right.
point. Right. And then you could table it until such time as they have the materials necessary to deem the application complete.
Yeah, okay. I think,
I mean,
we don't, I'm just trying to fit in the public hearing. We don't normally do the public
We
hearing
don't,
at
but
this
you
point.
could still, I mean, we always open it for public comment,
Right.
so you can take public comment and
Yeah. And then, would we, when we deem the application complete, we could take public comment again, or
yes.
would we have to advertise for public
You have to have a
hearing?
public hearing. You'd have to have a formal public hearing.
Right, well, this is advertised as a formal public hearing.
It is, but it's not a complete application,
Yeah, so
so
I
you-
did-
you're out of sync.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I agree.
And we don't know what changes may come forth that the public may have additional concerns and want to speak again, for or against.
Yes, yeah. Okay. All right, so since we advertised as a public hearing, let's do the public hearing.
Or actually, public comment.
Which is now well, I mean, we advertise public hearing. we'll
Yeah,
make
it does, it's the same, yeah.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, just to be clear to the applicant that when they come in with a revised plan, we'll have to have another public
Right.
hearing.
Okay. So I will open the public hearing. Same rules as last time. I know you two are here. You have to speak from the podium. Please address the concerns that are in the ordinance. Please state your name.
We can circulate these. These are the actual pictures. I am the abutter, direct abutter.
Okay.
Pictures from my property line of their not storing materials. So,
Could you, before you leave then, could you just point to where you are on this?
I'm 406 West Mills Road.
Yeah, but you're probably, where, just roughly where would you be?
So this is my house. This is my house.
So you are right
Yep.
there, you,
This is me. You can write
okay.
on this.
Is this your house?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I don't think that's,
the house is
yeah,
there.
right.
That's the turnaround the driveway.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
So I just have some questions and some comments. My name's Sally Cheever. I live next to the Starretts. We purchased the house from the Cambas, and as I understand it, there was a lawsuit involved for this situation. So I've heard, people make comments that nobody had an issue with this business going in there, but actually that's not the truth. I've been complaining for a year, and I feel the Starretts, I don't know if they're purposefully misrepresenting what actually happens over there, or if they aren't really aware of what the conditional use is. So the initial conditional use was so that they could have up to 5 construction vehicles visible. It wasn't actually a use to run a construction operation over there. They're not falling within the,
Well, I think, let me stop you there, because I
Okay.
think that the zoning board of appeals, right, gave them permission for the commercial use. So they are allowed to have a commercial operation on that property.
so so the conditional use under rural residential, you can allow a conditional use for contractors for the storage of vehicles and equipment. So that's not actually what's happening over there. They are running a construction business over
Right.
there.
Which they have,
Backhoes. So in other words, a conditional use in a rural residential, then they'd have to follow the conditional, if you're talking about conditional uses in rural residential, there are requirements for that.
oh, no, I see your confusion. No, this is not a conditional use. This is a commercial use in the residential district. It's not a conditional use of property in a residential district. It is recharacterizing
So
that-
rezoning, we're
Correct.
rezoning? So when I asked that question, I was told that's not what was happening. So okay, I'm on board with you now.
Okay.
That they're trying to rezone the house next door to me for commercial
They
use.
have.
Okay.
That's been done.
And they're running a commercial business right now out of there. They've been
Correct.
running the commercial business out of there.
Correct.
So does that have to follow the in-home use, home business?
No, that follows the commercial. Just as if it was in a commercial, just as if it was in, along 302 in Raymond. It has to follow the ordinance of the commercial property.
Is this property rezoned now?
No.
No,
No,
not,
but it
so-
has,
use has been allowed.
but the use is allowed, so it's looked at as a commercial property.
Isn't that with compliance, following certain ordinances inside that?
Yes, right?
So-
In compliance with the,
But if they're out of compliance with with the use,
yes, yes.
then they're out of compliance.
It's tucked to the mic so the public.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry.
So I was under the
Good catch.
impression, and if you look at the minutes from the last meeting for the conditional use, was that everybody was on the same page, that they had to meet.
Are you talking about the zoning board of appeals
Yep.
meeting? Okay.
We were not there.
So we don't,
I have it.
I have minutes if you want it. So the discussion was around, we're going to have this conditional use for construction vehicles up to 5. We had all that conversation. And then there was the conversation about, does it fit the, endless conversations about, does it fit under the guides of an in-home business, which, there are requirements for that. 90% of it has to happen in the house. All of the minutes revolve around, no, we don't do any work outside. We just load up the trucks and go. And so that's how it was approved. So I think that's really important background information for you to have as the planning board. That was, and it was, I have the approval, and they even said if they don't operate, they put a condition in there, kind of, I don't really understand how it worked, but if they don't operate for a year, then that conditional use
Goes away.
is revoked. Okay, so that's all in the minutes, and that's the framework for this, and that's what everybody understands they were trying to comply with, is having a home business, conditional use to have these construction vehicles on site, and that they were going to meet those requirements, which they haven't. They don't have any permits for any of these temporary buildings that they have on there, although there are concrete pads, so I question whether they're truly temporary. They've done a lot of work to the driveway that comes down to the back lot. I don't believe that was permitted. So they're skirting absolutely everything. And now what is going to happen, because this has been going on since 2020, and they still don't have the required paperwork done. They've been served 2 notices of violation because they're still running the business, and I have to listen to a backup beep of backhoes 24/7. And they also have, in those pictures you can see, that they're stockpiling firewood for sale, and that's not all coming from the clear cutting that they did of the land. They just on Friday dropped off a bunch of logs from somewhere. And you can see the picture that they used was from 2021 in their application. There's all of that material and then some still on site. So the fact that she's saying that material is not stockpiled there, that it's just there temporarily, and it's gone in a week, that is not the truth. And people have been complaining because the noise is unbearable. They are running, it kind of sounds like, a quarry over there, grinding things all the time, the machines with the incessant backup beeps. I sent Alex, I don't know how many recordings and videos throughout the whole day. And they're not supposed to be operating because they're under violation because they have not had any permits done. And so my frustration comes when people actually have been complaining. It shouldn't have got this far. I have the minutes for the meeting where she's professing up and down that they don't do any work on site, and that there's, no materials, and that's just not the case. And I find it very difficult that directly across the street is the town offices, and people didn't realize this was going on. If you go to Google Maps Street View, the picture that they have of 402 Webbs Mills Road is of them. It must have been shortly after they built the place, and they put up their business sign there. So somebody at that time must have known that they intended to run a commercial operation in a rural residential area. And so I am frustrated because
You sound frustrated.
they are not following, and they've had since October 2020 to get their act together, and they just don't.
But let me just stop you for a second, because, and Alex, I'm kind of confused here as what the board is being asked to do. Is it Elise?
My name?
Yes.
Sally.
Sally. I don't know where I get Elise from. I wrote down Elise. Sorry, Sally. What Sally is asking, or has concerned about, would not be what we are going to be looking at this point on this project.
Somewhat, yes, yeah.
Hardly anything. But, she has valid concerns.
Yep.
So would those valid concerns go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Nope. That train has left the station.
Right, so where, What she's asking for, we're not going to be able to do because
You don't
we don't.
rule on use.
Well, there's,
Right.
there's some stuff in the site plan requirements that you guys can make findings on, or requirements for buffers and
Right. But
hours of
not-
operation and stuff like that.
Right.
From there, then it becomes an enforcement situation if they don't then comply with the site plan requirements.
Yeah.
So an enforcement now or an enforcement of the original notice of violation from 2020, the second notice of violation from June 22?
We don't get into that.
I know you
Sorry
don't,
to
but
tell you
so
But where do
what
you
I'm
go?
saying is we have a problem because I want one of two things to happen. In the minutes of that meeting, when they were given the conditional use, not commercial use, conditional use was what was voted on. When they were given the conditional use, there was a stipulation in there that if they did not operate for a year, that conditional use would be rescinded. So you get to choose one of two things. Have you been running that business since 2020? And if so, you need to be assessed the fine for the violation. Or have you not been running that business out of that area since 2020? And if that's the case, you no longer have the conditional use.
Okay. But again, Sally, that's not, you're talking to the wrong people.
It shouldn't get any further.
Well, yeah,
Right? It hasn't been
Well-
rezoned, and they're running a commercial business as we speak.
but they have been given, they may not have
Conditional use.
for that, to run a commercial business in the residential section, residential district. Am I wrong here? Is that?
You're wrong.
Well, I don't necessarily think so. Because someone could get a conditional use approval to
Right.
have a contractor use
Right.
and run that business out of their house.
Out of their house.
And be fully compliant.
And be fully
Out of their
compliant.
property, basically.
Yeah.
Their house, their property.
Without doing any modifications to the property that trigger site plan. So site plan is triggered when someone wants to do a non-residential structure.
Commercial.
Right,
That's where you guys would come in.
right.
So there is some work that could be done on the lot that might not trigger site plan, but that doesn't really matter because they did do work that triggered site plan.
Right.
So that's why they're here.
That's what they're here.
For you. Yeah.
Okay. And I understand that.
Yeah.
But I think what you're asking is that they not conduct this business, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right, so
See, and that's
you
not-
would think that there would be, so you would think, I'm sure that people were not aware that we were rezoning
Well, I used,
that.
Well, so this can all happen under the Raymond ordinances without any kind of rezoning, i.e. contract zone or anything
So
in terms of changing the zone.
The lot wasn't rezoned. It's still a residential zoning district.
And that's allowable under our
Yeah.
ordinances.
Well, so that didn't change. The only thing that changed was the use. So a use and a zone are two different things. A residential use can exist in a commercial zone, for example. So they're two separate things entirely. This is still a residential property that now has an allowed commercial use associated with it. It might be accessory to the primary use of the lot, which is a residential single family. And those two can coexist together.
So I guess that's where my confusion is,
Yeah, 'cause
because
if you look at the actual zoning information in our land use zone, if you go to, now in the new ordinance, but if you go under what's allowed for uses, you have permitted uses in section B, then you go to C, conditional uses. That includes things such as nursing homes, funeral parlors, medical arts building, mineral extraction, public and quasi-public recreation, and contractors. And it gives you a limitation of the number of vehicles and pieces of equipment that are not screened from view from the surrounding property and street. When a piece of equipment is located on a trailer or truck, the combination shall be considered a vehicle and additional space of equipment, blah, blah, blah. So it's a conditional use
I got
within
it
the
now.
zone.
All right.
in the zone.
But they don't get the full privileges of if it was a commercial zone and they were running a construction company there. It's
Correct, but from a
considerably
site
more
plan
limited than
perspective, yeah, that's usually addressed with the conditional use, if there's specifics to that. What you're looking at is just the site plan requirements. And the only way I can explain it is you'd have to look at it as if it were a commercial business. You know, you'd have to use those same standards,
Yeah,
basically.
but if it was a commercial business, they could store materials there, they could store more than 5 vehicles, but we're not, or they're not
Right.
entitled
When I
to
say
this.
standards, the ones that we just went through, basically. The performance standards.
But those
So-
performance standards that we just went through are not going to address any of these issues. Well,
Correct. Correct.
So
Other
can
than
I just read
possibly
from the
hours of
minutes
operation.
around the approval?
Well, that doesn't do anything for us. I mean, they have the approval. If you have problems, we're not the ones to come to. If you have problems, you would go back to them or go to Alex. We have nothing. It would be not, just go like in one ear and out the other ear, only because we can't do anything about it. I mean, it's like
When it
being
comes to the
concerned.
business practices or any violation of the use, that's through code enforcement,
Right.
not through the planning board.
So there's the guy,
Oh, I know, I've tried, yeah.
he doesn't listen to you?
No, I have the email trail, yeah. So it shouldn't have gotten this far, because there was time and time again, people say nobody complained. I have the letter from the lawyer that the Canvas hired. We had purchased the house probably 2 or 3 weeks before that site walk on site there, and I was told, oh, this is just a construction company, and we're not doing any work on site here. We just get in the cars and we go to the customer site. That is just not true.
Okay.
And those, if you look at the minutes, that was the grounds with which they were giving their conditional use. And so here we are, we're just plowing right through everything, and we're going right to the planning board, and you're gonna approve a commercial business in a residential.
Yeah, well, we don't have a full
Area.
application.
Oh, I know.
So,
My other question is maybe to Alex, if there's been violations served to the property since the conditional use was approved, I don't know if this board can approve a site plan with a violation.
Oh, that's a good question.
The guidance from the select board has been that they would like them to obtain site plan approval. The select board did vote to start the enforcement process against them, to take them to court, essentially, if they didn't start the site plan process with you guys. So that would put them, if you guys decided to do
So-
that, then that would basically put them nowhere.
Put a rock in a hard place there.
What?
We don't have a site plan, so they didn't start the process.
They just-
Otherwise, the town takes them to court.
So I just want to point out a pattern of behavior.
Sally, we can't go on like this. We know your position, we've listened to it. There's nothing else that we can do that you are asking us for. We're not going to just kind of walk through this, but there's nothing more that you can add at this point that's going to get us.
Well,
I
I
mean,
think-
we understand.
Yeah, I think her concerns of noise and
Are very valid, and we can address
Right,
those.
Right.
Right. I mean, some of those things we can address. I didn't mean we can't address any, but what I'm hearing, your frustration and what you're saying, a lot of that is not up to the board. But,
They have not one
so
permit
if there's
for
somebody else that wants to
anything.
speak, I gotta keep the.
So aren't
Sally, I
you-
have to keep it moving.
I know, but aren't
Okay.
you in charge of like the permitting for these things that they did over there?
No.
No, who's in charge of that? You, Alex?
The planning board is in charge of site plan approval. So building permits, which would take place after someone has site plan approval, that's our responsibility.
But what if somebody does all the building and everything without getting any permits?
Then we send them a notice of
So my question
violation.
is, do we only enforce ordinances when somebody complains or when it's been brought to our attention?
Typically, we would take any enforcement action if something's been brought to our attention or if we receive a complaint, yeah. Like we did for this particular violation.
But
Ma'am, do you want to speak, have something to say as well?
I have something.
Sure.
They still don't have permits for anything, so.
I'm Luann Levitri. I live at 370 Webbs Mills Road, and I am at a butter as well. I don't sit directly as close to the property as Sally because
You're further down?
I have 25 acres. So I'm kind of in the middle
You have
of
a
my
buffer?
25
Okay.
acres, but I am a butter. So I think you need to have some history about what goes on with this because, see, the board at the ZBA, it went to the ZBA. My husband and I went to the ZBA and disapproved of their doing this on the site in a commercial fashion in a rural residential. The ZBA had their meeting. They pushed it through, even with our really having big concerns about why they were doing it, and they went ahead and approved it. We went and appealed it, which is part of the process that we're allowed to do, because there was a quorum and we had a deadline that we had to meet within so many weeks of the original ZBA meeting. One of the people that sat on the ZBA board that would have been the quorum called in sick the night of the appeal. Therefore, the appeal was halted. There was a few more weeks to go to the end of when we could have appealed this. And at that point in time, we had gathered all this information about the fact that they had violations. They had done all of this work unpermitted. It was just astonishing that it had gone so far without anybody kind of going, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. So the deadline comes, or it's coming, and the gentleman that called in sick then resigned from the ZBA, which absolutely put us dead in the water. We never had our appeal. It was never brought to the ZBA. We had no recourse. The next thing is I'm calling Alex because I know the citations are out there. What's going on? What's going on? The Starretts are making no progress in trying to fix anything, change anything. They have expanded the business since they got their approval from the ZBA, and it has continued to get worse. And the only reason that there's an application sitting in front of you was because I started calling in June of this summer, and every month, what's going on, what's going on? A second violation was issued to them. And in order to not have the violation and not have to start paying fines, they had to submit a plan to you. So there's the plan. I saw it online. It's a joke. It's basically what they've done on that piece of property, drawn on a piece of paper. Nothing.
Well, the plan, we know that the plan is incomplete.
Right.
So we
And
can't-
so all I'm saying to you is there's no recourse. Please, I think you should have some of the background so you know when you're looking at their site plan going forward that these people have not been in compliance. This has been going on for years and years and years. They're allowed to continue to operate under those conditions. We live with those conditions on a daily basis, and nothing gets changed. I think that's not so good. And I think the town of Raymond is setting a precedent to say, yeah, just go do whatever you want to do. You don't need a permit.
Guy who was here before just did
Sally,
it.
you can't, we have to be on the tape.
So as far as the permitting goes, it says, go do whatever you want to do and then come back and we'll, look at what you need to do.
Okay.
And I think and maybe just, I know you can't do anything right now. I get it. But going forward, maybe the town needs to look at where we're going with these things, because I don't think you want commercial sites sitting in the middle of rural residential areas. That's all.
I'd agree. Okay, is anyone else speaking on? All right,
So,
I'm going to close the public hearing. Go, Jim.
okay, so I was gonna say is, I understand, I hear the neighbors, to your point, if this is a use issue with code enforcement, but I think from the board's perspective, you could look at this as if all those things weren't there.
Right, well, we have to, basically.
You,
right?
you basically have to.
Yeah.
So if something's not conforming, they have to, as part of the site plan process, we'll have to either relocate that or remove it to
Right.
comply with our site plan standards.
Mhm.
So that's the only leverage you have as far as making things work
Right.
correctly on the property. As far as the use goes, that's between the code enforcement officer and the town's legal counsel.
Yeah, I agree.
It's unfortunate, but to that point that it's kind of drifted on this far, but here we are.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, first of all, we don't have a complete application.
Right.
I guess the next question would be, you know, we've gone through some of those items, they've gone through them. Like things with buffers, we need to see where those buffers are. They'd have to be deed restrictions, things like that. So there's a lot more paperwork to do than just say, the buffers are there, they're good, we need to see physically where those are. And I also think, given the fact, you know, this is an aerial image taken from Google, the accuracy of that is not great.
Right. Are the buffers going to be based on commercial or based upon residential?
They would be based upon, they're the buffer requirements for a property abutting a residential.
Right. So it'd be a commercial, so it'd be the largest, it'd be basically our largest buffer for commercial use up against a residential use. Because we have those situations,
Right.
to your point, down on 302.
Yep.
And those are pretty big buffers in those cases. The other question that you might want to ask this evening, given the fact, is do you want to do a site walk?
Yeah, and I'm wondering, do we want to wait for the plan to come in to do that? Or do you think it's yeah, because right now,
Maybe need some flagging out there too after we get the plan, because you can't tell
Right.
much from here.
Do we
Okay.
even consider an application so long as they're in violation?
Say that again, sorry.
Do we consider an application as long as they're in violation?
That's a question we have.
They
to-
can't get out of violation unless they get the approval.
catch me too here.
It's the only way out for them, unless they get a consent agreement from the select board, but the select board didn't want to entertain a consent agreement at this point. They wanted them to go through the process to get the permits legally.
And that's the only way to clean it up, so.
Yeah. Okay.
And then one other thing to think about too is we're gonna have snow soon, so I don't know if we don't do a site walk before the next meeting, you're looking at probably January, February, where you won't be able to see.
It might be better to put the leaves down.
I'll leave
I
it.
just sent, I
Leave it
just
down.
gave you pictures.
Yeah.
Well, the leaves are down now for the most part.
I don't, what's the board want to do? Do you want to go do a site walk prior to, quickly?
Yeah.
Or? do you-
Yeah, I think
yes?
it'd be good.
Yes?
Yeah, I would agree. It makes sense.
Okay. Sandy, when can you do a site walk for us?
We have to advertise that, and I have to get that in. It's too late for this Friday, but I can get it in for the 18th. So you could do the site walk the week after the 18th.
Which is Thanksgiving week.
Which is Thanksgiving week, so that's not going to work.
Right.
So the first week in December.
Yeah. Gets dark early. So is Saturday, like Saturday, December 3rd? Is that, you could do that by then?
Oh, yeah, I could get you advertised for that, of
All
course.
right. Get my name's right. It's Nicole, right? Is it?
Yeah, it's Nicole.
Nicole?
Yes.
Would December 3rd work for a site walk for the board for you?
Yes, I can make that work.
Okay, the board? Yeah, so time, morning?
10
0600, what?
10?
10?
Ten?
10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Go here.
Sandy, 10 o'clock? Nicole, 10
Sure.
o'clock?
Sure.
That is advertised. Obviously, it's sidewalk, everybody is welcome to attend.
Yes.
And back to the initial comment, since this application is not complete, I don't even think we need to table it. Right?
Right.
It's not a complete application, there's nothing really to table. We will do another public hearing when the full application is in and the board accepts the application.
In the meantime,
Right.
are they allowed to run their operation?
Yeah, Sally, you can't really keep on talking outside of the board. I gotta ask you not to do that, okay? All right. Nicole, so what we would be needing from you is all the rest of the pieces of the application process. I think I saw the checkoff list in your initial submission. Is that correct? Was there?
It was, but not filled.
So I would suggest you get a hold of Jim and ask him for a kind of a checkoff list as to what you will need to submit for the next It would be actually 2 planning boards from now.
Sounded like they had a consultant they were working with.
Oh, are you working with a consultant?
Yes, we're working with Mainland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
So-
mainland should connect with
Yeah,
the
so
town.
just make sure Mainland connects with Sebago, with Jim, and they can work out what's required. All right. Does the board have any questions? Did I miss anything? Say anything wrong?
I'm just wondering if
Say anything right?
we need to take a vote for the incomplete application.
I don't think it's a bad idea.
I think just given the history of this project, I just think it's important to document.
So you want a vote to say that the submission is incomplete?
Yeah, I don't think we just want to do it by general. I think the board should vote to say that they deem it incomplete.
Okay. Somebody want to do that?
So I make a motion that the application is incomplete currently.
Okay. So the motion is that the Nicole Stowe and Landscaping Service application for commercial use in the R zone is incomplete at this time. Is there a second?
Second.
It's seconded. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Kevin, I'll remember you this time. All right, so we have deemed the project incomplete. Now that we've done that, does it need to be tabled? No.
It's incomplete.
It's incomplete. Okay. All right.
It won't be on the agenda in December now. It's too late.
All right, so Nicole, do you know where you stand?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All righty. All right, our next, one public hearing to the next public hearing on the, so I shall open the public hearing on our codified land use and shoreland zoning ordinances. If anyone would like to speak to that? And hearing nobody, I will close that. Are we sending this to the selectmen? Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So we need a motion then to send the codified ordinances to the select board, and I assume we're sending them recommending approval. Actually, I just did the motion. So moved.
Yep.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Right. So the only thing I would add to that, and Sandy, is I think it is important when these are finally finalized, if they are printed and/or copied, that each board member gets a hard copy of the final version of the ordinance. There's been some discussion as to whether or not that would happen.
One question I had is, when this goes into electronic version, will there be, for instance, if you click on that use, it'll take you directly to the use?
Yep.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a
High
nice
tech.
setup. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna make it a lot easier.
Well, it kind of takes a lot of fun out of it, though, doesn't it? I thought flipping 16
Well,
pages.
it took me a while to figure out that all the sections, you don't have pages, you gotta go to the top for
Yeah,
the
the
section.
draft is different than the final too, so.
But then we all have different page numbers that we have to kind of rectify.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a fresh start.
The good old days.
Fresh start, yeah.
All right. You're up, Alex, with
Yeah, so I
ordinance
passed
changes.
out my current list of stuff that I had from the last meeting and the last year. So I can kind of go through some of these to get at least the ball rolling, and then if you guys have anything else you want to add, you can. The first one, actually the first two, and this is a working list, so I started the first two are good, and the rest I hadn't finished, which is why they look different. But the first two are required by DEP. So last year we amended the shoreline zoning ordinance. We sent it to the state, and the state approved it with some conditions. And so now we've got 3 changes that we're bringing back that are follow-up from their conditions. They didn't like some of the wording we used on some things. The first one, they aren't going to allow us to keep a variance option that we replaced the setback reduction with. And that's actually a change in interpretation from the state that even the attorney wasn't aware of. So that's kind of caused a little bit of an issue, but we're going to bring that back and fix it.
So what's the removal of the single family
Well, so the statute allows a variance for a single-family home within the shoreline zone that doesn't have to meet hardship. That's the reasonable return criteria.
Yep.
And DEP has said that that is less strict than Chapter 1000, the shoreline zoning guidelines. So they won't allow us to keep it, even though the statute includes that. And it actually says in there that that variance doesn't apply to the water setback, which the attorney reads that as, okay, then why would they even say that if it doesn't apply to the shoreline zone? So it's kind of, it's a change of interpretation is what he's said. Basically we take it out. That's all it is. We still have our regular variance, but now it just makes it practically impossible for anyone to get a variance in the shoreline zone.
Okay.
So that one's kind of still a work in progress. I'm still working with the state on that one to see if we can do anything, but it doesn't sound good. So I'm putting it on there because it's probably going to come out. The second one, they actually rejected our definition for solar energy systems. So we need to replace it with their definition for solar energy systems, which I'm not a huge fan of because my whole goal the last few years has been to match definitions between land use and shoreline zoning to make it easier. And so now we're going to have a situation where the two definitions don't match.
Do we want to look?
We might want to do that just to take theirs and just
And I know the
apply
DEP,
it, but
you know, and beyond that, the DEP with the solar energy systems is currently going to be looking at those again because of the massive amount that we're seeing.
So it might not work to take theirs and apply it to the land use because our solar energy systems section is basically it's for commercial
For the solar farms, right?
solar energy. And the definition that the state's provided us with basically is for, it doesn't include any commercial. So once we get it written out, maybe we can play with that a little bit to try and match them, but we might not be able to. The third one is one of the changes, one of the errors that was caught through the codification process. That's the open space section that references an ordinance section that doesn't exist. So we need to fix that. That's going to be an easy one though.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Okay, but
We kind of went round and round trying to figure out where it was trying to point to, but we tried to find when that was actually adopted.
can
but
you
it's pretty
comply with the non-existent? One?
We're setting them up for failure on that one. So the fourth one is kind of the first one that I'm interested to hear your thoughts on. And we don't need to do this tonight. I can kind of intro it and then maybe we talk about it next meeting. But this was for the school.
Yeah.
So Jim and I did a staff review for a very minor project up at the elementary school. They expanded their back storage area a little bit. They added a dumpster pad and a couple new propane tanks. And so this came up within the performance standards. It's actually for screening of special features, I believe is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's worded in a way that doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Our ordinance?
Yeah. And so the attorney had a suggestion on how we could fix it. The end result was what they were trying to do was put a dumpster within the setback. And my interpretation was that wasn't allowed, that special features needed to meet setbacks. And after them looking at it and the attorney looking at it, that wasn't necessarily the case. They were allowed to put the dumpster within the setback as long as they screened it. However, the ordinance required it to be screened, and that was a fence in this case, I think. Mm-hmm. So he suggested a change because the way it's written right now, it says that special features need to meet setbacks, and then it goes on to kind of include some buffer language that is kind of difficult to read. So I just want to clean it up.
Okay.
And the big thing is they often do a pad, which is a poured concrete, basically foundation. So, you know, it does kind of have a structural component to it. So I think it does make sense to kind of clean it up.
So I think what we would probably be looking for is, do you guys want these to have to meet setbacks, or do you not care as long as they're screened? And I think it was written to probably be really considered in the commercial district, which doesn't actually have setbacks. But this was not in the commercial district, so it does have setbacks.
Or can't you set it up that way? So if you're in,
We can set it that way.
can't you
Sure,
just say in
absolutely.
commercial district, you have 0 setback?
Zero, yep.
And in any other zone, you have the standard side yard or rear yard or whatever?
Yeah.
But we'd have to document that, right?
Well, that's kind of how it's written now.
Oh.
It's just not very clear. It's intentionally unclear so that you can go the other way if you wanted. So I think we'd clean it up to,
Yeah.
to basically make it so that you have to meet the setbacks. You can't just buffer it and not meet the setback, unless you're in the commercial district, which doesn't have a setback
right.
anyways.
Yep.
So you wouldn't need to worry about it. Okay. Shipping containers.
Are these Kevin's favorite? Are these for residential use?
So actually, you and I haven't talked about this at all.
Uh-oh.
So this one I haven't really done a lot of homework on, so we'll probably have to continue this discussion if you guys want to think about it between now and the next meeting. But so right now, shipping containers. I don't know. Did you write the shipping containers thing?
No, sir.
It's an interesting read.
Well, thank you, but I
so-
didn't do it.
Fonts.
Denied.
Bob fonts.
So in a residential zoning district, so that's anything that's not commercial or industrial, shipping containers are not permitted.
Unless they're permanently mounted on a pad or a foundation.
I don't know. I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, so when people have like these pods and they move, are those?
So the way we've been handling it is if they wanted to use a shipping container, right now we are making them essentially make a facade so that it doesn't look like a shipping container. So they have to side it, roof it, and have a support underneath it.
What are these uses for? Storage only?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think some homework would be for you guys to maybe read through the shipping containers section. And I would really like to take a closer look at this because, well, this actually came about the
Is there a
Public
difference?
Works Director would really like to get one for storage down at the Sand and Salt Building. And that's a residential zoning district. So the first sentence, shipping containers are not permitted in a residential zoning district.
Takes care of that.
Takes care of that. So I told him I would bring it up to you guys to look at. Doesn't necessarily mean we need to change anything, but I think we do get a lot of people who ask about them. We've had one violation this past year where we had to make someone remove one. They do exist out there.
So with
Kevin.
a lot of moving companies now, they use smaller shipping.
You can do it
containers.
temporary.
You can do it temporary. I was going to
Yep.
ask you if there's a time limit on a temporary.
They're allowed to be on site for I think 6 months. There's a lot in this section of the ordinance. It's
What
kind
do
of
most people use them for?
storage.
Of what? Like
Instead of going to a storage unit, they throw it in a container.
But it has an open top?
No.
Or
No.
Just like a truck container. You just
Oh,
open up
I
the
got
back.
it. Okay.
And we do allow them for construction sites for temporary storage. If someone's building a house and they want to put a pod on or a shipping container for like a construction trailer, we
mobilizing a
let that
construction
out-
site,
let that
yeah.
go. I mean, that's not a big deal, but. So yeah, I think if you guys want to look at that, and if we don't change anything, then we don't change anything. But I told them I would at least bring it up to see. I mean, maybe we change it so that there's that not allowing it in a residential zoning district takes out 80% of the town, 85% of the town. And do we really want them in the commercial district? I don't really know that would really make any sense to have shipping containers because we only have a small section of commercial, and do you really want them on 302? I mean, I don't know. So it seems kind of,
Do we really want a sided Connex box?
well, I mean, and it doesn't make any sense because, I mean, you probably spend more just doing that than just building a
that's what I mean.
structure.
Yeah,
So
I don't know if that's the
fix,
That's the fix.
So that's that one. The next one's the land use map. We need to just correct, so the inset section on the current land use zoning map is wrong.
Is this the land use map that?
Has been wrong since 2014.
Okay. Yep.
So we need to fix that. It's kind of been on the list for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So Sebago has actually already done that. They've actually updated the map. It just needs to be adopted. So we have the work already done. I got to reach out to, is it Jake?
Jake Hansen.
Yeah, Jake's done the work. I think we've already paid for the work.
Is Jake the one that used to come and brief us?
No. The one that used to brief you was John Giles.
Yeah.
John Giles, that's it, yeah.
And he's left.
He's left Sebago. He's back in the city for a while.
So it would be really just a correction to an error.
Okay.
It did cause a pretty significant issue with a lot split earlier this year, so that's kind of why I want to get it fixed. They relied on the zoning map online, which is incorrect. And now I've updated the PDF on the website to say that there's an X through it, and it says don't use this, use this, which is correct, but.
Well, I think in the ordinance it says you're supposed to use the official map located at the town.
It does, yes.
Yeah. And then the last one I have is we have to require for permits for work in the shoreline zone, they need to submit before and after photos. That needs to go in the ordinance. That's one other thing that DEP had pointed out to us.
Good idea.
So they need to submit a before and after. Did you have anything else that I missed?
That's the whole shoreline zone beyond the buffer?
Anything in the shoreline, any permit for work you're doing, tree removal or
All of Raymond Cape?
all of Raymond Cape, even 1,500 feet from the water, yep.
I know.
Yep. But today, I mean, I think nowadays, most of the permits we get have photos included because it's easy to, with a smartphone to just snap a few pictures. And our permit portal allows you to do it right from a phone, so you can upload it right from your phone. So most people are already doing that. DEP requires it for a permit by rule anyways, so a lot of the contractors are already aware of that. You got anything?
I don't, now that we've got everything codified, I think everything that we've done the last couple of years is fine. Print.
The only thing that isn't at this point would be the street standards. I'm going to get a quote this winter when we do the budget to also bring in the street ordinance and the subdivision ordinance into this.
And I know.
And just keep adding to it.
Wayne's out there, and I know you and I and Wayne talked the other day about just making sure we're all on the same page for what NFPA requires and what our street standards are to make sure we're doing that, especially with the hammerheads and the turnarounds and the slopes in those areas, because you can't be on a steep slope for the fire truck to turn around.
Do you guys have anything else you want me to add to this list, or maybe brainstorm for like a workshop next month? Because my plan next month would be to bring in the actual draft.
Yeah, the only thing I had was that I think we should think about requiring the planning board to notify subdivision owners.
So I watched the meeting from last month earlier today, and that we did discuss, you guys discussed that last time, and then there was some back and forth, and it was, I guess, decided that we already do that, so it was left off. So I wasn't sure, I didn't put that on the list because I wasn't sure of what you guys.
But after that meeting, we had another discussion, and I think we kind of agreed that
Yeah, for any amendment to a subdivision, all the parties in the subdivision would be notified, not just the immediate.
Okay.
Yep.
So that would probably be
that was
in
That's it.
the
Yep.
subdivision ordinance.
Right.
Okay, I'll add that to the list.
Any other changes for now? All right.
Can I ask one? Oh, we're gonna put that up. They may not be aware of that, but you and I are, the tiny homes.
So we have the
Kevin,
definition. Yeah, I think for now.
The state's in the process of
Yeah.
redoing it again, so our attorneys told us to wait.
Yeah, and I did reach out to the town attorney today. I sent him an email just to see what his update was on, all of that stuff, the accessory dwelling units and everything, and he hasn't got back to me yet, but
Okay.
before next meeting I'll have, if his response back is, hey, it sounds like this stuff's going into effect July 1st and we think the town should update the ordinance to include this, then I'll bring that next month, but I don't think that's the direction it's headed, but.
Not that it's a problem here in Raymond, but another one I'm seeing in a lot of communities, especially urban communities, is EV chargers.
Yeah.
And how do we,
Maybe it is something we should look at.
it could come, I mean, for the private, we don't really care because, but, I mean, for commercial use.
For commercial use, yeah.
Because, you know, those are, like I said, they've got them so you got swipe, so if you're on a trip, you can pull into a commercial site, so I don't know if that's something we wanna think about, because they are a pedestal structure and
Yeah, it's electricity.
electricity, big electricity.
So you're saying for kind of a public use or just at a
Yeah,
commercial?
well, for both,
Like if Good Life wanted to add a car charger?
correct.
Right.
Does it meet a setback? Are we into like a dumpster situation here?
Well, that's technically shoreline there, so it would be considered a structure. It'd have to meet setbacks. If it was in commercial, then it wouldn't need to meet any setbacks. So if it was like 75 feet over to the right.
All right.
Because there's like apps where people can go to have their car charged and everything, so. If you're on a trip to Raymond and you wanna go camping, you wanna get that charge in before you.
So my goal is to bring this list back to you with possible amendments, maybe not anything to shipping containers, but bring this back with some draft language to start.
Are we shooting for the next town meeting?
Yeah, so the goal here would be maybe we do a workshop next month and then January and then try to do a public hearing in February or March.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make it. Okay.
No new applications?
No.
All right,
No, right? Sandy, we didn't have anything come in today? No, okay.
So Sandy, come off mute, because this, I want to just talk about signing, the document signing process, which,
Plans cannot be signed electronically. They have to have original signatures for the registry.
Correct.
yeah, right, no, I'm not bringing that. It's, I think that one of the COVID holdovers, when we went to Zoom, was, you know, that the board was asked to go to town to sign things.
Okay.
And that is convenient for some of us and very inconvenient for others. The old time, what we used to do back in the day was it just came to the following meeting.
Right.
And we just signed it all at the meeting.
Right.
And that saved everybody from going down to the town. It doesn't impact me much when I read my email, but I mean, there are some that work.
Yeah,
That,
when you read your email.
Yeah, I mean, some of us work, and and that is a big impact. So I'm wondering, can we go back to that? I mean, can we just bring the things to to our following meeting to get it signed?
Sometimes it's a timing issue because things, by the time we get the plans to be signed, they've only got so much time to record them
Right, but never,
from when you approve them.
Right?
yeah, but never within a month,
45 or 60?
right?
I think it's 45.
Sometimes they've been that long.
But I think it's been that, I think we've got in that tight situation when they've been late, not when we've been late.
Yeah, it's typically
Right.
them.
Yeah.
It's
But if
I know
they don't
Dustin's
bring,
had it.
you approve the plan, and then they have to bring us the final plan
Right.
Right.
signed.
So I think
And
it's,
when they wait to get it to us, they've still got that same 45 days from when you
Right.
approved it.
right, but it's kind of like, it's one of those old saying, their emergency doesn't become my emergency. You know?
Right, but in the timeline, in a way, it does.
Well, no, it doesn't, because if they don't get it to us in time, it doesn't get signed. And then they have to bring it, they redo it, and redate it, and bring it back.
Well, it's not like we ask for a 2-week lead time on those to get signed. either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, we don't.
I mean, it's like 2-day lead time, right? So, I mean, that's the way, I don't want to put words in the mouth of the board here, but I mean, that's the way I think we should be going,
Should we-
is back to
Should
that.
we put something, I'm just wondering, should we put something, because we have, in the subdivision ordinance, we have a section, it's always subdivision.
Right.
Because we don't really sign site plans, right?
We should.
Yeah.
Well, that's something we could
Yeah,
talk
we
about
should.
too, should we be signing site plans as
Yeah.
well? And if we do that, should we have in there under the approval process for both site plan and subdivision, that the plan still has to be recorded in the state statute of 45 days, but it would be the board's action to, if it's not final, because if you have conditions, if the plan's not prepared, it will be then processed and signed at the next business meeting.
Yeah.
Now,
I agree.
now, the only thing that stinks is if it's in the winter When we have
Well,
a cancellation,
I
then
mean,
it gets weird.
we have made exceptions in the
Right,
past.
right.
And we can make exceptions again in the future, but I don't think the standard should be that.
And I just think if we put it in the ordinance, then people, the public understand the
Yep.
policy, and then there's no like, well, I didn't know.
All right, Alex, add it to the list.
Okay. That would
The
be
only
incentive.
other
But-
issue you
but I
may
do
have
think we-
with that is whoever approves it at one meeting, suppose they're not at the next meeting to sign.
Well, that, I mean, yeah, we can,
Well,
we can deal with that.
That's on the person that's
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah.
Do they need every signature?
No, they
No.
just need the majority.
So, I mean, in that case, they could come to town.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you want to include, I mean, it's a discussion we'll have anyway, but do you want to have a discussion about signing site plans?
Yes. Yeah, we're supposed to, we should.
We should, just because, we get multiple versions, we get a long process.
Right.
The one that's on, at least we have a signed copy in our records.
Yeah.
It's not recorded, but we have a signed version on our records.
Right.
Okay. All right, what else?
I do.
We're looking for that last motion. Nice motion. Yeah. Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor?